Joshua, we appreciate you being with us as always. I know you have been listening in through this morning and afternoon's testimony. And just in the last few minutes, we heard the defense asking a few probing questions, getting to the notion of what Colin Gray knew and what he perhaps did not know in the lead up to the Appalachia High School shooting. What has stood out to you so far as defense has been questioning the sister of Colt Gray, the accused Appalachia High School shooter?
Yeah, probing is one word to use. Pointed, it's another. Cross-examining child witnesses is an art into itself. The very slightest change in demeanor, in tone, in the dynamic can land positively or negatively with that jury immediately, because this is a child. This is a child who is clearly being authentic and real. The mere presence of her at this trial is a trauma, and everybody needs to respect that. The jury is going to be protecting her because that's a natural feeling when you are sitting in a position like that. When we see children, when we see people going through this, we want to protect them. So the defense is doing a very good job of carefully treading that line while also illustrating that children are children. They say things that they don't remember. They don't have great memories. They are inclined in forensic interviews to make the interviewer happy or satisfied with their response. And you can tell that this young lady has been thoroughly talked to about what's going to happen today, and she is sticking to the party line, which is yes, sir, no, sir, not getting into explanations, not trying to have a conversation. That makes the defense's job very challenging, because there's just not much you can extract from a child witness without amping up a little bit of the aggression, a little bit of intensity. And that just doesn't look good with jurors unless you're soliciting the smoking gun. We don't have that here. Let's
Joshua,
look at the purpose.
forgive me, let me, if we can do this right now, let me play a little bit of some of her testimony from earlier today when she was taking questions from the state. And then I want to pair that with a few answers she gave just in the last few minutes and get your thoughts on that, if that sounds okay.
Please.
All right, let's play this from earlier today as prosecutors questioned the daughter of Colin Gray on the stand.
When you're on your way in to get that interview, did Colin tell you anything about how you should answer those questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what he told you.
So he told me, like, if they asked me anything, about if he knew that Colt had problems and that his problems would lead up to this, that I should basically try to cover for him, and specifically about the pictures on the walls. He told me not to tell them that he knew what they were.
Okay. And when you say pictures on the wall, do you mean the pictures of Nicholas Cruz?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the news articles about Nicholas Cruz?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so he told you to tell them that he, Colin, didn't know who that was?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is that contrary to what you had actual knowledge of?
Yes, ma'am.
I guess, would that not be truthful?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So Joshua, you hear that testimony from earlier in the day. As we've discussed in the past, a lot of the prosecution's theory of the case here rests on the notion that, as they allege it, Colin Gray had ample warning that something terrible could happen. And despite that warning provided his son with the firearm allegedly used in this shooting, of course, Colin Gray has pleaded not guilty, and the defense is working to poke holes in that theory. But when you heard that piece of testimony, how did that register for you as an attorney analyzing this from a legal perspective?
It's incredibly damaging to the defense because it's showing not just the knowledge of forethought that these were issues that are certainly relevant and important to the inquiry, but that dad not only has that knowledge, but it's actively working to stymie the investigation by talking to a child witness who is inextricably involved and placed in one of the most uncomfortable positions ever. She's got an older brother facing life in prison, having allegedly committed this horrible crime. Now she's going in for an interview with a psychologist. And everybody knows, including her, this interview is going to involve allegations about her parents. So just think for a minute about how you process that as a child, and then your father's telling you to not necessarily be honest, to not fully cooperate. That is a brutal fact if the jury takes it, accepts it, and embeds it, which I believe they did, because there's no real reason to question or impeach this young lady's testimony. I think that it was very honest that her father tried to manipulate her responses during this forensic interview. That's just awful.
And Joshua, we should point out here as well, and as you have pointed out, just the humanity of this ordeal that this young person is going through as a witness on the stand, and as you pointed out, going into the forensic interview that she went through some time ago. This is a tragedy that occurred on many levels here. You point, Joshua, as well to the state emphasizing that point of her testimony earlier today. The defense seemed to pick up on that, unsurprisingly, and just in the last few minutes, we heard them ask a few questions that stood out to me. In one line of questioning, the defense attorney said to Colin Gray's daughter on the stand there, "Do you remember telling the interviewer that your dad didn't really know anything about what Colt was doing on his computer?" And she said, "Yes, sir." In another line of questioning regarding the computer room where apparently pictures printed from Pinterest, which was one of the social media platforms that Colt Gray allegedly used to follow and pay interest to other school shooters. The defense attorney said, "Do you remember telling the interviewer that your dad usually never goes in there?" And Colt's sister said, "Yes, sir," in there being the room where some printed out pictures would be hung up on the walls. Was that the defense's effort, or part of it, to make the case that Colin Gray maybe didn't know as much as the state would like the jury to believe?
But I think that's the intent and the sentiment that the defense is putting forward. But really, what's happening is this is a setup for some impeachment to show how all of her testimony should be less reliable in front of the jury because of her age, because of the difficult dynamic. The defense really wants to show that all of the testimony from her is self-serving in a way that the defense can kind of make a point with, which is, you were here trying to follow your dad's directions, but that meant that you weren't truthful with a lot of stuff, and you're just answering the state's questions today because you were prepared to answer them. And now you're being asked those same questions and you're denying knowledge or not remembering. Later on, there's going to be evidence of what actually happened inside this forensic interview. That's really the opportunity to expose that this child witness's testimony may not be super reliable, even though as an overall impact, it's absolutely brutal. The jury's not getting stuck on the specifics about what she did or did not say, remember or not remember. It's the fact that she went through this process and there are legitimate questions about her father malingering and interrupting and influencing her statements during this forensic interview process. She doesn't make the case by any means for the state, but is obviously a big emotional part and a big part of filling in the background about how much Colin Gray actually knew about his son's behavior.
And Joshua, we're short on time here. I want to ask you one last question before we let you go. Obviously, so far, this has been the state's case. The state has been calling their witnesses. The defense has been questioning them on cross-examination. The defense will start to make their own case at some point once the state rests. What pieces of evidence, what witnesses do you anticipate the defense may introduce to attempt to make their side of the case?
Wow, you're going to limit my time. That's tough with my job. Yeah, man, there's so many different pathways that the defense can go forward with this. And the benefit of the defense is, of course, the state has the obligation to prove the charges brought beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense can bring up 10,000 different defenses. Anything can be a defense as long as it's relevant and linked to the allegations. And that's really going to be interesting to see what pathways the defense chooses. I believe the defense is going to explore thoroughly how many other people knew, how many other people were given warnings, how broadly well known this was, and nobody else did anything. Nobody else took the step that they were allowed to take. Did the school escalate? Did law enforcement escalate? Law enforcement could have seized the phone. There's a lot of not blame passing, but certainly shifting that focus. But then there are many other pathways that the defense is going to go into in order to just chip away at the overall strength of the state's case, with the state's central focus being that Colin Gray was the best and last person that could have prevented this tragedy because he was given specific actionable information about his son and he was the adult. And so it'll be interesting to see how the defense tries to portray the multiple pathways towards a defense.
All right, Joshua Schiffer, we appreciate your perspective. As always, a lot of questions still swirling inside this courtroom. A jury is going to have the last word inside that Barrow County Superior Courtroom at some point in the coming days. Joshua Schiffer, thank you very much.